All right, welcome. Today we are diving deep inside the body to map out one of its most critical and, let's be honest, sometimes pretty notorious pieces of infrastructure, what I like to call the sciatic nerve superhighway. So, have you ever felt that? That sharp, shooting pain that just zips down your leg. You stand up too fast and bam, it feels like an electric shock from your lower back right down to your foot. If you have, you know exactly what we're talking about today. It's an incredibly common and pretty jarring feeling. And that very specific traveling pain, well, it has a name. We call it sciatica. But what's actually going on in your body when that happens? Let's get into it.
Okay, so here's the thing about sciatica. It's not really a condition on its own. It's more of a symptom. It's basically the name we give to any pain that follows the exact path of the sciatic nerve. And that path, believe me, covers a lot of ground, all the way from your buttock down to your leg and foot.
So, what's causing all this misery? Well, the bottom line is that something is irritating the sciatic nerve, right where its roots come out of the spine. And the number one culprit? It's usually a prolapsed or, a slipped disc. It literally presses on the nerve and, to use our analogy, it causes a massive traffic jam on that neural highway.
Right, so to really get a handle on the problem, we first have to understand the highway itself. So let's properly meet the star of today's show, the body's supernerve.
And I'm not kidding when I call it a super nerve. This thing is an absolute superstar. We're not talking about some little side street here. This is the number one largest nerve in your entire body. It's the interstate highway, thick, powerful, and incredibly important. So where does this beast of a nerve even come from? It's actually a really cool origin story. It's not just one single thing. Instead, it's this massive bundle that's formed when 5 different nerve roots from your lower spine all come together. Imagine 5 local roads, from L4 down to S3, all merging to form one giant superhighway. That's your sciatic nerve. Okay, so let's actually trace this highway on a map. Step 1. The nerve pops out deep in your gluteal region, your butt. It starts its long journey between 2 specific bony landmarks in your pelvis. It's way in there, deep behind your hip. From that starting point, it travels downward. And here's step 2. It passes another super important landmark. You can actually kind of find this spot on yourself. It's right between that bony knob on the side of your hip and the bone that you're sitting on right now. And trust me, we are definitely coming back to why this specific spot is so important a little later on. And that brings us to step 3, the end of the line for the main trunk. The nerve keeps going all the way down the back of your thigh, and it finally stops at the very top of the crease behind your knee. Just think about that for a second. From your pelvis all the way down to your knee, that is one seriously long continuous nerve. So, a nerve this massive has got to have some pretty demanding jobs, right? Oh, for sure. This is not just some passive cable running through your leg. It is the absolute command and control center for a huge part of what your leg does. For starters, the main trunk itself is basically the boss of your hamstrings. Those big muscles on the back of your thigh, the biceps femoris, semitendinosus, all of them. The sciatic nerve directly controls them, and you can't bend your knee without it. Now, right where we left off, at the back of the knee, our superhighway splits into 2 major off-ramps. First, you've got the tibial nerve, which continues straight down the back to control your calf muscles and the sole of your foot. Then you have the common peroneal nerve, which kind of wraps around the front and side to handle the muscles that lift your foot up. So one nerve splits into 2, each with its own very specific, very important job. Okay, so we've mapped the highway and we know what its job is. But what happens when it's more than just a little irritation or a traffic jam? What happens if the entire highway shuts down completely? And that's a really serious question to ask. What does happen if this huge nerve gets completely severed, say, high up in the gluteal region? Well, as you can probably guess, the consequences for everything downstream are pretty profound. First, let's talk about motor loss. It would be devastating. Your hamstrings would be paralyzed, so forget about bending your knee. And since its branches control everything below the knee, all those movements would be gone too. This leads to something called foot drop, which is exactly what it sounds like. Your foot just hangs there, limp. And it isn't just about movement. Remember, nerves carry sensory info too. So with a total shutdown, you'd also lose all feeling on the outer side of your leg and pretty much your whole foot. The communication line is just cut. Now, you might be thinking this is all just interesting anatomy, but this detailed map is absolutely critical in real-world medicine. And it's especially true when we're talking about, well, nerves, needles, and know-how.
This is where things get really fascinating because knowing the nerve's location is critical for two totally opposite reasons. Look, for a regular intramuscular injection in your glutes, the whole goal is to go into the upper and outer quadrant specifically to avoid hitting the sciatic nerve. But if a doctor wants to treat sciatica pain with a local anesthetic, they target that exact landmark we pointed out earlier to get the medicine right on the nerve to relieve pain. It's all about location, location, location.
Of course, no superhighway exists in a vacuum. To really understand the landscape here, we have to talk about its next-door neighbor, another major piece of infrastructure, the femoral artery. And this artery is a big deal. It's the main blood supply for the leg, sending out all sorts of branches, superficial ones, deep ones, to feed that whole region. So this artery runs down the front of the thigh, and right around the back of the knee, it becomes the popliteal artery. Wait, does that location sound familiar? It should. It's the exact same area where our sciatic nerve splits. And that's the whole point. These major highways for nerves and blood are packed incredibly close together. It's a perfect example of why this anatomical map isn't just academic trivia. It's absolutely vital knowledge. And really, that's what this is all about, isn't it? The body isn't just a random jumble of parts. It's this incredibly intricate network of superhighways. And understanding the map is absolutely key to navigating our own health, to figuring out how things are supposed to work and what's going wrong when they don't. I mean, think about it. We started with just one single nerve, and from there we've touched on muscles, movement, sensation, even how doctors use needles. It just proves how amazingly interconnected everything is. So the sciatic nerve is just one of these incredible highways, which makes you wonder, with this entire amazing map inside of all of us, what should we explore next?